Today we'll talk about fishes. In this first lecture we'll talk about traits of chordates, and we will talk about the most primitive fish, and then we'll talk about sharks. In the next lecture we'll talk about bony fish. So fish are all in the phylum Chordata, which is the same phylum we are in, so you're going to find that we have some traits that we share with fish. All of the features that chordates have are they have a notochord, they have a dorsal tubular nerve cord, they have a post-anal tail, and pharyngeal gill slits. Now you may think, really? We have all those things? Well, some of the things we have only when we are embryos, and we lose them when we become adults, or even when we are born. So we're going to look at the subphylum Vertebrata. And fishes are the most numerous of the vertebrates. So there are more different kinds of fish than any other kinds of vertebrates. And there's three major groups of living fish. There were other fish that became extinct, and we won't be talking about them. So first we'll talk about the class Agnatha, and these are the most primitive of the living fish. They don't have any jaws, and they were in the earliest fossil record 500 million years ago, and this includes the group of lampreys and hagfish. They're slimy and they don't have scales. They're long and eel-like, and they are scavengers and parasites. So first off, lampreys, you can see here at the top it shows the mouth, and this mouth doesn't have a jaw, but it has all these teeth-like things that they can grab onto another fish or other animals, and then they hold on and suck out the blood. So they are parasitic predators. And here's a lamprey. So many lampreys are freshwater fish. Hagfish, on the other hand, are found in the ocean. And hagfish are found usually in the deep sea, and sometimes they're called slime eels because they're covered, they secrete this slime out of these mucus glands, and they are just covered with this slime. They have a mouth with paired tentacles, and they have gill slits, and they look very similar to an eel. Many times, if a whale dies or some animal dies and falls to the bottom of the sea, hagfish will devour it. And here's a picture of a whale that has fallen down to the bottom of the sea, and you can see all the hagfish swimming around eating it. They used to use hagfish for their skin. They have a very soft skin that they would make these, they called them eel skin. They would make purses and wallets and things out of them. And they were pretty popular for a while, maybe, 40 years ago or so. And a lot of them were caught at that time to make these wallets and things. Next we're going to talk about the class Chondrichthyes, which are the cartilaginous fish. So these are fish that instead of hard bones of calcium, they have bones that are made of cartilage, which is much the same as the inside of your nose or your ears. And these are some of the earliest known of the jawed fish and include sharks, rays, skates, and chimeras. Some of the characteristics of sharks are they have a ventrally located mouth, so their mouth is underneath. They have gill slits as opposed to other bony fish which have a cover over their gills. They have the gill slits. They have dorsal fins, pectoral fins, and they have special kind of scales called placoid scales, which are also sometimes called dermal denticles. And that is because dermal means skin and dent means teeth. So they're like teeth on their skin. And their skin was so rough, the Hawaiians could use the skin for sandpaper when they're building their canoes. They have a special kind of a tail that's called a heterocercal tail, and that means the upper lobe is longer than the lower lobe, and that gives them lift. It helps them swim in the water, and we're going to see why they need that extra lift in a little bit. The tail on a fish is called the caudal fin. So some of the characteristics about sharks are the jaw, and these jaws have rows of teeth that are like a conveyor belt of teeth, and when one tooth falls out, they can just grow another one, or it just pushes forward in its place. And some sharks have serrated teeth and some have smooth teeth. These are the dermal denticles, the skin, and you can see the gill slits here. And then up in the top you can see these are claspers. And the male sharks have claspers, which they use to deposit sperm into the female. So they have two of them, and it's very easy to tell if a shark is a male or female as long as you can look at its underside. Most sharks swim through the water, and as they swim through the water comes in their mouth and then out their gills. And they also have a spiracle that they can suck water in through. So the water goes out over their gills and oxygenates the gills so they breathe. Some sharks have to constantly keep swimming to draw water in over their gills. They don't actively pump it. There are some sharks that can actively pump water over their gills, and you can sometimes find these sharks sitting on the bottom, and those are things like white-tip reef sharks. Also, sharks have a special organ called the ampullae of Lorenzini, and these are these jelly-filled canals that are underneath the skin. They have this ampullae of Lorenzini and then the nerve that goes into the brain. And they are connected to the surface of the skin with very small pores. And if you look at a shark close up of its head, you can see these pores everywhere. And these are sensory organs. These are how they can sense vibrations in the water and also chemicals in the water. Sharks also have a lateral line, and we'll talk more about that later. So here you can see a close-up of a shark's head, and all these little pores here, these are the pores that lead to the ampullae of Lorenzini. You can also see here how they have the conveyor belt of teeth, so each one of these teeth just goes all the way around, and if this outer tooth were to fall out, the next one would just grow in to fill its place. Sharks do not have a swim bladder to help them stay up in the water, so they have to always keep swimming, and they have a few things that help them. One is that they have this heterocercal tail, or caudal fin, that helps give them lift. Also, their pectoral fins are shaped like airplane wings, and that gives them lift. And then one of the other main important things is their very large liver right here. They have a large oil-filled liver, which helps them float. If you think about how if you have oil and vinegar dressing, the oil floats on top of the water. So same thing with this, their oily liver helps them float. So here you can see the heterocercal tail forces their head upward. Their pectoral fins give them lift, and so it gives them a forward motion. Whereas in most bony fish, they have a swim bladder that they can fill with air. These sections of their muscles are called myomeres, where they have the sections between the muscles, and you can see that if you eat a piece of fish and it flakes apart, that's that part where it flakes apart. Those are the myomeres. And here's that conveyor belt of teeth. These are some of the Hawaiian sharks and rays. The most common one that we see probably is the white tip reef shark right here. And The reason we see them the most is they're one of the few sharks that don't have to always keep swimming, so they can rest on the bottom. So we can look inside a cave and see one in there. Sometimes we'll see gray reef sharks, maybe out by Molokini. There's some out there. They can be aggressive. They can get up to 7 feet long. And the Galapagos shark looks very much like a gray reef shark. They have gray tips on their fins, and they can get up to 12 feet. So if you see something that you think might be a gray reef shark, but it looks too big, then it might be a Galapagos shark. And those can be dangerous. Another common inshore reef shark is the blacktip reef shark. This one has black tips on the edges of its fins. We also may see hammerheads and some other ones, and maybe even a tiger shark. These are the most dangerous sharks we have. There's also several types of stingrays, which are also cartilaginous fish and closely related to the sharks. This one is a manta ray, and it is very recognizable by these large, they're called cephalic lobes in the front. They're filter feeders, so they swim through the water with their mouth open, and they scoop the water into their mouth with those cephalic lobes. We also have the broad stingray that we can find along the bottom, and then probably the most common is the white spotted eagle ray, or the hihimanu, that we see swimming around the reef. The offshore species we could see, if you're lucky, you might see a whale shark. Every once in a while people see those. Oceanic white-tip shark are usually out in the deeper water. They see these commonly off of Kona if you go out a ways. And then some of these other ones are probably going to be found out in deeper water. And even the great white shark sometimes will show up in Hawaii. So these are the largest sharks, and actually the largest fish in the world. This is a whale shark, and you can see here with next to some divers how small the divers look. They are up to about 30 feet long, and they are filter feeders, luckily, so they just swim through the water with their mouth open, eating. The one below here is a basking shark, and the basking shark also swims through the water with its mouth open, eating plankton. This is a gray reef shark. You can tell by the edge of it, it's all gray except the edge of its tail and the edge of its fins are darker, almost black. This is off Molokini. This is a white tip reef shark, and easy to spot this one by the white tips. Now there's also an oceanic white tip shark and a silky silver tip shark that have similar markings. This one is a black tip reef shark, and the most feared shark in our waters probably is the tiger shark. Unless you happen to run into a great white shark, which very rarely is seen here, but every once in a while one will be spotted. They mostly live in colder places though. These are the rays that we have in Hawaii. So we have the manta ray on the top left, and then the eagle ray, the spotted eagle ray in the other pictures. The rays have a barb by their tail where the circle is, and this is a stinging barb. On most rays it's venomous. They use this for protection to get away from predators, so you don't really have to worry about one coming up and stabbing you with their barb, unless maybe you try to grab them, and then they might. This is what a stingray barb looks like up close. These are some skates. Look very similar to a stingray. And then one other group are the chimeras, and chimeras are also known as ratfish. You can kind of see why if you look at their tail. They have a long skinny tail that looks like a rat, and these are mostly found in deep water, so these are not something you would come across normally. They're found in very deep water, so not a common fish to see.